Go. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. And welcome to everybody who's online. Thank you to those who struggled through the ridiculous weather to be with us tonight. It means the world to Nikita and to me that you've come out to celebrate the life of David, a truly unique human being. I met David when I was just 22. He is the father of my glorious, irreplaceable daughter and has been an integral part of our lives ever since. He had just returned from a year on Gough Island, his second after a year in Antarctica, when we got together. We may not have remained romantic partners, but we shared a profound bond as Nikita's parents. We're all familiar with David's adventurous spirit that took him around the world. He built friendships from every corner of the globe during his years of travel and working offshore. And if you knew him, you know that being a great friend was a superpower. He had a unique ability to connect with others in ways that made them feel seen and valued. Of course, he was also notoriously unpredictable. Anyone close to him also knew the maddening side of his wild ways. At the same time, no one could deny the depth of support he always gave, especially in times of extreme crisis. David always stepped up, as I'm sure many friends here tonight will attest. The news of David's terminal illness hit us hard, just as it did all of you. But despite the shock, we were profoundly grateful to be with him during those last days. He had precious last moments with Nikita, watching videos of the dogs they both loved, laughing about old jokes, sharing precious memories, and complaining about his uncomfortable pillows. It was heartbreaking to see him being taken by his illness. But it was also such a privilege to be by his side, to offer the comfort and care he so desperately needed at the end. We read him all your messages of love and support on that final day. We laughed, we cried, we stroked his face, held his hands, which was still beautiful, and told him how much he was loved. We believe he has gone to a place of peace, free from loneliness and pain. I want to thank some of the incredible friends who supported us through those very difficult final days. When Nikita and I found ourselves so far away from home, we couldn't have got through it without the late night calls, the messages, and the reassurances we received from you all. To Min, Patrick, Mike, and Tessa, Mike, I don't know if you're online. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for always being at the end of the phone. Your support, no matter the hour, was a lifeline. Lindsay, thank you for organising the live feed so that David's friends across South Africa and the world are able to join us today. For Nikita, her husband Ilan, who flew to Portugal for only 2 days and provided much-needed real-life hugs. To Kelly, Amber, Iman, and Alan, and many others, thank you for being the fabulous, steadfast friends and family that you are. You comforted us so deeply, especially and I can't thank you enough. I would also like to honour Anna, David's wife, who is following online from Portugal. Anna was a godsend during those final days and continues to be a huge support to us as we navigate everything in the aftermath. We wish she could be here with us today to feel the love in the room, and we send her all our love and gratitude. Also to Taryn and Sandy. Sandy, are you here? Hello, my darling. Thank you for hosting us here tonight. We love you so much. I'm going to hand over now to Nikita, whose tribute to her dad will be followed by memories from Patrick, his boy bestie, and Min, his girl bestie. Afterwards, we'll take a few minutes to refill our glasses before opening the floor. Please feel free to share any short memories, the funny and the poignant. We know David was always the funniest person in the room, so let's remember the good times and the laughs he gave us. Let's celebrate the best of him and the reasons we loved him. A pillar has fallen and our hearts are broken, but we will carry his memory with us always. Thank you very much.
Also the most irritating person. Numerous occasions.
Okay.
Really? Very close. Oh. How close? Okay, so thank God Kelly got me an Urbanol or we wouldn't be here today because I was a wreck yesterday. But I just want to say I'm probably not going to look up, so I'm just going to read it. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today to celebrate my dad. My mom has really welcomed you and thanked you all. But I just want to add how much it truly means to us to see you all here. Our relationship had its ups and downs, but my dad was also the funniest person I know. I remember every lunch we had with him roaring with laughter. I remember him walking into Woolies in Hulbert wearing nothing but a kukoi, no shoes, farting loudly and blaming the old woman behind him in the veggie aisle. When I read all the messages on his Facebook and talking to all his friends, I realized that everybody feels the same. Someone told me that when they heard laughter in the office where he worked, they always knew that David was visiting. In primary school, there was this award for shooting on the mountains, which I obviously never got because I wasn't clever enough. And then finally, at the end of the year, I got it. And they announced my name, and the reason was for having a good sense of humor. And we know exactly where I got that from. We had so many adventures in his old combi with the bed in the back, and they had those bucky ballas that hang at the bottom. And then they kept getting stolen, and he kept having to buy new ones. I remember driving through the night, sitting in the front seat, zipped up to a sleeping bag, because there was a hole in the floor where all this cold air was rushing through. He'd drive shirtless with a cooler box between us, asking me to pass him a beer, and I was so enthusiastic about the whole thing. Even though now I look back on it, he was obviously just driving drunk, which is now illegal. He took me and all my friends camping in Beaverlag, pitched our tents, made our food, and we had the time of our lives. But I'm sure it wasn't as relaxing for him because it was just a bunch of teenage girls. I remember lying in the bed in Hulbert, listening to him brush his teeth and just gag repeatedly and so loudly and aggressively. And I remember how he needed to be so clean that the average loofah wouldn't do the job, so he bought a pot scourer. And he would pot scour his body till he was roaring red. For my 16th birthday, he gave me a wind-up torch. For Christmas, he gave me a pocket knife. He taught me how to change a tire on the Land Rover, how to use a drill, and how to jumpstart a car. I'll always be grateful for those life lessons. I'll carry the best parts of him with me always. I'm so glad we had those last few days together. We could laugh about his nappy falling down and how shit the hospital food was. And I thank him so much for all the humors and adventures and everything between. Thanks, guys. Patrick.
I don't know. Yeah, I've got to need this thing. Hello. Hello. Hi, everybody. For those who don't know, I met David when we did a year in Antarctica together, and the following is just some thoughts about my relationship with him and where it took us. I'm also going to be reading because I don't trust myself. Okay, it's hard to put into words the shape of a friendship that spanned decades, countless miles and moments that stitch our lives together into a rich storybook. Ours was a friendship that grew from simple laughter over shared beers and shared tears, forged under frozen skies. We spent a full year together at Sinai Base in Antarctica, a place so remote and so cold that most people can't quite imagine it. Down there, the sun disappears for months and the wind cuts through you like a knife, and the silence can feel endless. But with Dave around, it felt like the liveliest place on earth. He didn't just warm the place up, he lit it up. His laughter would echo in those icy walls. In ways, oh jeez, I'm sorry. Dave was in the truest sense of the word a raconteur. He had quite a bad stutter, and at times he artfully used this to make his stories even funnier. He could spin a yarn effortlessly. You'd swear he was born under a spotlight. Where? Hello? Sorry. Okay. Okay. Hello? Where am I? Okay. Okay, spotlight. Okay. He had a gift for taking the most mundane detail, a missing sock, a squeaky door hinge, a particularly bland meal, and turning it into an epic adventure. Is it gone off again? Hello? 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 Again? We're going to do that a few times. Okay. Anyway, where were we? Epic adventures. He loved misusing words purposely and pronouncing them incorrectly just for comedic effect. You could always tell when he was about to launch into one of his stories. He'd get that mischievous look, twinkle in his eyes, lean forward ever so slightly, and the entire room would fall silent in anticipation. I'll never forget our Saturday night evenings at Sanai. We used to drag out the old 16mm projector and watch movies on those big reels. Um, they were all old movies. We're gone again. Hello. Hello. Oh, okay. Okay. The, we're watching the old movies. The popcorn we had wouldn't last for a full year, but the ritual remained. Every single reel change, Dave would stand up, rub his hands together like an eager magician, and begin his legendary intermission speeches. He described in excruciating and hilarious detail what our sweethearts and girlfriends allegedly back at home were up to this particular Saturday night. Prepping and primping for a Saturday night out in the town, short skirts and revealing tops, etc. By the second reel change, things had always progressed. The girls had had a bit too much to drink, and the cute guys in the bar were circling with intent. I won't dare repeat some of the more scandalous suggestions, but let's say no one's reputation was safe, and everyone was in stitches. We laughed so hard our sides ached. It was that kind of laughter that reminded us we were alive and that we were together, and even at the bottom of the world. That was Dave. He was more than just a funny man. He was the glue that held people together, the spark that lit up even the darkest night. Sorry, I'm going on a bit. Behind the jokes and the ridiculous humor was a man with a heart as big as the sky. And when he gave you one of his trademark hugs, you felt it in your bones. They were kind of hugs that said, I'm here, I see you, and I care. Dave loved the outdoors. He wasn't just a weekend warrior. He truly belonged outside, fishing, scraping mussels off the rocks in Hermanus to make a huge pot of deliciousness, camping under a moonless sky. We had great fun on the Orange River trip we did together. Each canoe was given a nickname after the first day. We were crowned a Donus and a Donut, and spent the rest of the trip arguing who was who. Dave lived a life at full throttle, not just during big adventures, but in the smallest moments. A shared cup of coffee at sunrise, a long conversation over fire, a quiet walk up Table Mountain. He took pleasure in seeing seeing the absurdity of life and making us laugh at ourselves. Um, one, yeah, I had a section I was going to talk about Diane Nikita there, but it's already been mentioned, so I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to speak on that. One of the last things Dave said to me or the last calls I had with him, and I was hoping to speak to him again after he came out of the theatre, but that never happened. He just had expressed a wish to come home. So sad. But I think it's important to say this too. Dave was by no means perfect. Like all of us, he had his flaws. Sometimes these got the better of them. He had his own struggles and his own battles. He tried to face them with honesty and the stubborn courage that he applied to most aspects of his life, not always succeeding. He was at times frustrated and hurt that his generosity of spirit was not quite reciprocated. It is these imperfections that make him real and made him human and that made him Dave. They remind us that loving someone isn't about ignoring the rough edges. but embracing them as part of the whole story. Dave leaves behind more than memories. He leaves behind the living legacy of laughter, connection, and love, whose stories will live on in our tellings, in the adventures we embark on, and the ways we choose to live our lives more fully because we knew him. So let's honor him in the way he would have wanted, with loud laughter, a few wild tales, a raised glass, and maybe even a slightly inappropriate joke whispered at the wrong time. Or the right time. Let's think of him every time we hear the wind rush through the pine trees and feel the tug of a fish on a rod, or find ourselves laughing so hard we can't breathe. Rest easy, my friend. Save us a seat by the projector. We'll bring the popcorn, and when we meet again, I expect a brand new story, one we've never heard. Cheers, David. You are one of a kind, and I am all the better, and we are all the better, having known you. Thank you. Thanks very much. I would just like to acknowledge a few people, if you don't mind, who knew him very well. Mike Van Oe Smith, who is in Ireland, in Clifton in Ireland, and as he says, welcome from the bog. Alan Marish, who he was an apprentice with, and he lives in Florida now. Hopefully he's watching. And the entire Sanai 27 team, the bond of brothers that has lasted nearly 40 years.
And then everybody can tell their funny bits.
Hi, everybody. I'm sure there are many people here tonight and also watching online who knew David far better than I did. But I have known him a long time. I met him in 1983, 84, so 41 years. And I'm sure we all have anecdotes and stories, some of them good and some of them bad, some of them unrepeatable. We're not going to talk about the pigeon tonight. But I remember one story which maybe was apocryphal and not actually true, but he told me this, that he turned up early one morning as the sun was rising at his first wife Julia's door, completely naked, with a bird cage, holding a bird cage. And I never really found out why, and I never really found out what the bird cage was for. Maybe for the pigeon, I don't know. But anyway, it's a good story. I met David, as I said, in 1983. I was living in a communal house in Hillcrest in KZN with Di and some other friends. And Mary Lou brought her friend David to visit us. Mary Lou Kemp, who I hope it's her birthday today, and I hope she's not too busy celebrating to join us online. Anyway, so David arrived with 2 or 3 black spaniels that belonged to somebody else, and the life was never really the same after that. And the impact was immediate. And we all have different stories about our relationship with him, some good, some bad. He wasn't always an easy old bugger. But there are many things, I think, that we can agree on. Somebody on Facebook, I think it was Werner, I think, said, "A mighty tree has fallen," which I thought was a really good metaphor. He really was a sort of unstoppable force. He was a hurricane of energy and restlessness, always ready to laugh, always ready to make you laugh. Also, he was clearly good at his job. I believe he was asked to do another job quite recently, in spite of having been retired. Well, in spite of saying to them, I am retired, go away, they still wanted him back. So he was good at his job, whatever it was. I never really understood it. He was an intelligent man. I know, like, he had what is nowadays called by the educational stuffed shirts learning barriers. I don't know much more than that. So he didn't always have a lot of success at formal schooling, but he was accepted to start a master's in whatever he did. I'm an English teacher. That's no mean feat. So a clever man, good at his job, all sorts of things David was. And finally, as I look back on my relationship with David, that spans 41 years, with lots of ups and downs, I always return to the one most important thing that many of you, I think, here and watching will have experienced this. On 2 occasions, I experienced the death of a partner. And both of those times, David was there. He was just there. He was there sober, serious, no inappropriate jokes, no nonsense, just there. He was good David, there for me. He knew what to do. And I'll always remember that. He just gave his support in such a sort of, in a way that you didn't even realize that he was giving his support. He just did what needed to be done, and he did what I asked him to do, and it was fabulous. So I'm grateful for that. He was, in those occasions, stepped up to the plate. He was sensitive and considerate and brilliant. Sorry, I didn't bring my tissue. I was never able to return those services. But I'm beyond grateful and happy and glad that in his last days, David had his wife, Anna, and his daughter, Nikita, with him. Sorry, time to wipe the bits. No one could have, he could never have wanted any more than his beloved daughter, Nick, his pants. And I know from my personal experience that nobody is better than Di at offering practical, solid support in a crisis, and my bestie Di. And finally, because I'm an English teacher, I always have to read a little bit of a poem. And this is a poem by the Welsh drunk poet Dylan Thomas. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to just read the parts that I thought were appropriate. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. And you, my father, there on that sad height, curse and bless me with your fierce tears, I pray you. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, we thought we'd take, miss our meet if we take a small break. I thought that everybody should just get some food and get a drink, and then we're literally going to open the floor for people to tell small little funny stories so that we can all feel a bit better. Thank you. And thank you to everybody for being here again. We couldn't be happier that our besties are here.
A bunch of 10 guys, and then I got a call one day from Ronnie Mull to say, we've got a gap in our crew. Do you want to fill it? And I phoned David. Well, he'd spoken, he's overseas, and he said, I'm coming home in a short while, but yes, I'm in. Anyway, we get to the first meeting of the crew to discuss all the plans for the trip up the mountain, how it's going to work. And the question comes out is, how high has anybody been here? So when it came to David, he said, the highest I've been is at the U2 concert. And on the way down, I missed out. He had a knee operation. Can you believe it? He had an op on his knee. So he says, I'm in. And he's 6 weeks out of an operation on his knee. And I thought he was perfectly healed. Anyway, we got up to the top, and coming down, David took a serious whack. And he was really struggling. And it took us about 15 hours to get to the bottom on the last day. And when we get there, he says, where's this fucking bus? And he was like really hobbling. And the two of us were walking together like this. And anyway, we walked all the way down the road to the bar where the buses were. It was about another couple of Ks. David walks in there. Where's that? You told me there was a bus. And he started banging the table. He was totally pissed off in front of all these people. He's such a wonderful man, and we had such a joy. Anyway, that's my little story. Thank you.
Elle, do you want to come?
Good evening. Okay, cool. I've got So some couple of stories about Dave quickly. Only good memories, right now of Dave, which is amazing. So we stayed in that headspace. He loved his music. When the Eagles play to this day, then it's like, I still think of Dave because all the Thailand adventures that we had. I had this feeling that he often saw me as like his long lost, not lost, but like son, stepson, somewhere there. So that love was real. We had amazing laughs together, crying laughs, and he taught me a lot, random things, but just in life, which I'll always carry on. And as Nick said, he was like officially the funniest dude that I know. And I think I try and keep some of his mannerisms with me to this day, because he's just like this laughing character, and you got energy from him, which everyone has mentioned, which is amazing. Our first time in Thailand together, we like had probably about 14 changs, and he pushed me in the pond. And I was in there like full body, getting up. Dai was super bleak, but I mean, random story, but it was a lach. And then when we had a bride at Dai's house, and he gave me like the tongs because he had smoking about 3 joints. And all the meat was burnt, but he was sleeping in Nikita's bed. And yeah, so that is the thing. But I mean, he was a very special guy. Myself and my mates, we called him the dude from the Big Lebowski. And we've all seen the Big Lebowski, and like that, you know, his nature was very dude-like, you know. And next, you know, I love you. All the mates send their condolences also. They were so shocked when they saw the dude had passed away. From all the mates also, just the dude. So yeah, we're here to celebrate Dave. We love him lots. We love his energy, and let's just carry on that energy with all the future events and just the future love. Okay. Dave.
Kick her on the knee. Roar, runs. Kick her on the other knee. Kick her on the other knee. Okay, Tessa and then Jill. Come, Tess. Is it on? I don't know.
Okay, so I met David. I just met Patrick. We were living in Johannesburg, and I was staying in a shared house with 3 women. I was one of the 3. And Patrick said, "You got to meet my friend David." And I said, "Cool, let's go out." So I think we went pub crawling in Hulbert or something. You could still do that then. And David was mind-blowing, exactly as Patrick had described him. But then he had, I don't know why, but he had nowhere to go that night. So I said, "Well, you can come stay in my house, but you're not to wake up the woman I live with. You're not to interact with him at all," because I knew by that stage how David was. And he was like, "I'll be very good, I promise." And he came home and he walked in, he went, "Shh, don't wake up the woman, shh." Made so much noise. I think he did wake up, but they didn't dare come out their rooms. And then he never let me forget this. I made him sleep behind the couch on a single mattress. It was far too short and was very hard. But he woke up the next morning and he was fine. And yeah, that was my first memory of David.
Jill, come and share with us. Jill's got a serious, fantastic story. Are you not telling that one? Okay. What's the Joshua one?
Okay, the Joshua one. David basically saved my boy from a near drowning. Yeah, that's what happened. He was the guy who had all the first aid knowledge and blah blah blah, and he got it together. But I want to tell you about the first time I met David. He was an ox. David was an ox. He'd come off a flight. It was when he was married to Christina, and she'd gone to fetch him at the airport. And we were having a party at the Kimberley Hotel, which was entitled the Microlight Revenge Party. And David came off this flight and was brought to this party, where he partied the whole night after being on this flight. Anyway, that was the first time I ever met him. But the story that I want to tell you, so David we lived on the same property.
Just disappeared.
Yeah. We lived on the same property for about 16 years. He used to call it the estate. So we were very, very interactive and close and blah, blah, blah. And when he when he left to go back to sea or whatever it was, he would always bring all his leftover food to us. So on this one occasion, he'd cooked this major spaghetti bolognese on a Sunday, and he was leaving the next day. So we got the bolognese. So on a Monday or Tuesday night, Ray and I were in the kitchen eating the bolognese. For some reason, thank the Lord, my children were not eating with us that night. This must have been about 17 years ago. So they were still quite young. Anyway, Ray and I are sitting there in like talking. So, we like communicate, but we're not like like we don't communicate. Anyway, we started communicating. And we were getting very, very deep. And then simultaneously, we looked at each other and we said, I'm sure I'm completely stoned. Which we were. And we then phoned David, who was visiting some cousin in PE. And he then acknowledged that he'd put a lot of dacha into the bolognese without telling us. I'm not sure what we did with the rest of the bolognese. I'll probably froze it for another time.
Kelly, Calandra Flan. Oh no, you do. You have a story. Come tell us. We want to hear it.
So the one story I remember, well, the first when he came and fetched us from Redham, and he wasn't allowed to come into Redham because he looked like a Bachi. But he made it through the gates, and it was my first birthday away from my mom, and he had stuffed the whole of the inside of the combi filled with helium balloons, and then you guys came and fetched me, like put me in. It was just so sweet and reliable that he just like showed up, and yeah, that's my story.
So sweet, Kenny. Okay, does anybody else want to talk before Patrick tells us a joke? Or are we okay? No, I'm not being, Liv, do you want to say something? You had many adventures with them. She did. I'm not forcing anybody. We all had wild times in Thailand together.
I will skip the Thailand stories because they're not very PG. But I think one of the main memories that always comes to mind of David is him collecting Nikita, Tessa, and I, and Kelly from a trance party and rocking up. It was one of the first times I think we were meeting him, rocking up in his combi, and he fitted in so well. And one of our friends had accidentally been spiked with acid, and I remember being so lovely and good with her. Anyway, that's one of my favorite memories of David.
Hi there. I mentioned in my talk about David having a bit of a stuttering issue. Anyway, he had this joke that he told. It's about these two guys that walk into a pub, and they sit down at the bar, and the one guy says, I'll have a beer, and can you give Donkey here a beer as well? And the barman looks at them and says, yeah, okay, fine. And they both have a beer, and they finish their beer, and the next order comes along, and the guy says, a beer for me, a beer for me, and a beer and another beer for Donkey here. And this goes on. The third beer, the same thing happens, and eventually the guy who's ordering the beers goes to the loo. So the barman straight away goes towards the guy who's been called Donkey the whole evening, and he says, "What's the problem? Why does this guy call you Donkey, and why do you let him?" And the guy goes, he always does.
Thank you, everyone. Unless there's anyone else who really wants to share a story, I think we're going to wrap it up, and thank you everybody online for joining us from around the world, everybody who came here today, and I think we will carry on the party. The bar tab's still open for a bit, so let's just enjoy ourselves and see David off in the manner he would have expected of us. Thank you, everybody. Oh, sorry, just finish.